To Estella, my brother said, raising his glass with a grin. Finally moving into that cute little house we got her. Laughter erupted around the table. Champagne flutes clinked. My cousin even whistled. I sat frozen, fork hovering in midair above a slice of lemon cake. The word "we" echoed in my skull like an alarm. The room tilted. What house? I asked, but it came out smaller than I meant. Almost a whisper. My mom, seated 2 chairs down, paused mid-sip. My aunt, who had been cutting into a strawberry tart, looked up slowly. My dad scratched his beard and gave me a side glance I couldn't read. Micah, the golden boy, my older brother, beamed, totally unbothered. Don't play dumb, yes. The bungalow off Sycamore? I told you, Dad and I made that happen for you. I live in a motel. Not figuratively. Not temporarily. A literal pay-by-the-week, second-floor room at the Everbright Inn, where the ice machine doesn't work and the hallway always smells like pine sol and cigarettes. I haven't moved into any house, I said aloud. My voice was steady now. I didn't blink. I've been living off instant noodles and gas station coffee. The only house I've seen lately is the Zillow listing I dream about when I can't sleep. The laughter died instantly. You could hear the hum of the air vent above us. Micah's smile faltered. My dad dropped his napkin and bent to pick it up like that would somehow make him invisible. My mom's knuckles tightened around her wine glass. I thought you moved in last month. I've been living in room 214 of the Everbright for the past 11 months. A beat of silence. Then my aunt spoke up, voice low and cautious. Micah told us you got the house. Said you just didn't want us coming over while you settled in. I stared at him. He shrugged. I meant to handle it, he said finally. It's not a big deal. Not a big deal. I stood up. My chair scraped loudly against the tile floor of the restaurant. Everyone turned toward me. You told me I didn't work hard enough to afford one, I said, locking eyes with my dad. You said people who rely on family never learn to stand on their own. His lips pressed into a thin line, but he didn't speak. I turned to Micah. And you? You said I was irresponsible with money and that you'd look into helping. But you never did. You just told everyone you did. Someone near the end of the table dropped a fork. I could feel my heart pounding in my throat. I've been living in that motel because it's all I can afford after my last contract fell through. And while I've been sleeping next to a broken heater, y'all were clinking glasses and talking about some fantasy house I've never seen. The tension was thick enough to slice. Then softly someone said, "Wait, I thought Micah bought that place in cash. Didn't you get money from Grandpa when he passed?" That was when Mom's glass finally slipped and shattered on the ground. The restaurant staff scrambled to clean up the broken glass, but no one at our table moved. The mood had soured fast, like milk left out too long. Micah looked annoyed now, not embarrassed. "Jesus, Estella," he muttered. "Can you not make this into a scene?" I tilted my head. "You already made the scene, Micah. I'm just finally showing up in it." My cousin Jamie, the only one who ever texted me just to check in, blinked slowly. "You said she refused the house," she said to Micah, confusion coating her words. He ran a hand through his perfect hair. "Look, I didn't think she'd want charity. She's always been proud." "I'm not proud," I snapped. "I'm just used to being lied to." Mom reached for her purse like it might give her something to say. "Maybe this isn't the time." "No, Mom. It's exactly the time." I turned to the rest of the table. "Let me tell you where I've been for the last year. The motel has black mold in the bathroom. The heater only works if I kick it twice. I got food poisoning from a vending machine dinner last month. And none of you noticed, because you all believed whatever story Micah told you." I let that hang in the air. "I believed him," Mom whispered. "He said you were finally doing well. That you didn't want to talk to us, because you were finding yourself." I let out a bitter laugh. I was losing myself. "But thanks for checking." Micah shifted, his jaw twitching. "You said you bought the place in cash," Aunt Rhea said again, her voice louder this time. "Where did the money come from, Micah?" He looked away. Dad cleared his throat, finally stepping in. "Micah didn't buy anything in cash." "Then who did?" I asked. Silence. Then Mom turned slowly to Dad. "You told me we were waiting for the market to cool down. That we were holding on to the inheritance for Estella's wedding, or a future down payment. That word, inheritance. I froze. Wait. What inheritance? Her eyes widened like she had just realized she'd said too much. When your grandfather passed. I never got anything from Grandpa, I said slowly. She turned to Dad again. You said. I said what I had to, he interrupted. Cold. Blunt. I wasn't going to hand 70 grand to a girl who didn't know what she was doing with her life. Underscore. 70,000. I felt the floor drop beneath me. You kept it? I asked, my voice no longer steady. You just kept it? He didn't answer. Micah looked at his plate, like maybe it would rescue him. I worked 3 jobs while you sat on money that was mine? Mom gasped. Her hand flew to her mouth. Dad stood up, grabbing his coat. I did what I thought was best. You would have wasted it. And instead, you invested it and told everyone I was just ungrateful? I said, my voice trembling now with fury. He didn't respond. Micah stood too. Let's go, Dad. This brunch is over. No, I said quietly. It's just beginning. I reached for my phone and scrolled quickly until I found it. The old group text with Grandpa's lawyer, the one I hadn't opened in years. Attached was a PDF I had never understood before. Grandpa's will. One clause, highlighted in yellow. To Estella Meyer, I leave $70,000 to be used toward housing or education. This amount is to be made available within 6 weeks of the estate settlement. Dated nearly 14 months ago. Mom was shaking. You said she declined it, she whispered to Dad. You said she didn't want help. And just like that, everything broke. I stood there holding my phone like a weapon. The clause from Grandpa's will was glowing on the screen. Clear, undeniable. $70,000. Meant for me. Gone. I want an answer, I said, barely able to control my voice. Right here. In front of everyone. Dad didn't flinch. He just looked tired. Worn. Like the mask he wore was beginning to slip. Micah stepped in, all smooth deflection. Estella, this isn't the place. No. This is exactly the place, I snapped. You both sat there while everyone clapped for you. While people thought you gave me a fresh start. Meanwhile, I was boiling ramen on a hot plate in a room the size of a closet. The server hovered nearby with a carafe of coffee, but quickly retreated once he caught the tension. Aunt Rhea leaned forward. Daniel, she said to Dad, her voice sharp. Did you take the inheritance? He didn't answer right away. His jaw was clenched so tight the muscles twitched. Mom spoke next, trembling. Tell me the truth. Right now. Finally, he sighed. I moved it into a long-term investment account. Under my name. My mom blinked. Without telling me? It was safer that way. Safer for who? I asked. For you, he said. You were always impulsive. I didn't want you wasting it. I laughed loud and dry. So you kept it. Lied about it. Let me drown. While you made yourself look like some kind of savior. I paid your car insurance for 6 months. I blinked. That's what you think buys you a clean conscience. Micah stayed quiet, his eyes darting around like he was calculating escape routes. I asked you for help, I said, turning back to Dad. You remember that? I called you when I got evicted. You told me it was a sign I needed to get serious. You said, try sleeping in your car for a week. Builds character. I was trying to toughen you up. You were trying to erase me. The table had gone completely still. Cousins, in-laws, second cousins. Everyone looked like they were watching a fire they couldn't put out. I didn't tell anyone. I said softer now. Because I didn't want to be a burden. But you let everyone believe I was lazy. Entitled. Just another failure of a daughter. Micah cleared his throat. Look, if it's about the house. Oh, you mean the house you told them I had? That I didn't even know existed? That was funded with money you knew wasn't yours. Micah looked at Dad. You told me I could say it was mine. You said it was just temporary until we sorted things out. You lied for him? I asked. Micah's jaw flexed. It wasn't supposed to go this far. But it did, I said. Mom stood suddenly. That money was her future, Daniel. Not yours. Not his. You stole from your own daughter. He looked at her, and for the first time he didn't have anything to say. I'm done pretending, I said, grabbing my coat. This family talks about loyalty like it's sacred, but only when it benefits you. I turned to Mom. If you knew and stayed silent, I can't forgive that. Not right now. She shook her head. I didn't know. I swear. Then I looked at Micah. And you? You owe me more than an apology. But he didn't speak. He didn't even look at me. What are you going to do? Someone asked quietly. I don't know, I said, walking toward the exit. But I won't let this stay buried. Just before I pushed open the door, I heard a voice behind me. Estella, wait. It was my aunt standing now too. If you want help getting a lawyer, I know someone. And I'll stand with you. Whatever you decide to do. I nodded. Maybe for the first time in my life, someone believed me, out loud. 3 days later, I was sitting in a stiff leather chair across from a woman named Cecily Atwood, Vice President, Client Accounts, Western Ridge Credit Union. Her navy blazer matched the seriousness in her eyes. Her tone was precise, unapologetic. I found the transfer, she said, adjusting her glasses. The funds were moved from Everett Meyer's estate account to Daniel Meyer, marked for Estella's housing assistance. She spun the monitor toward me. The amount, $70,000. The timestamp, the memo. Then she clicked again. Another transaction popped up. 5 days later, Dad had moved the money into a private brokerage account. No notes, no names, no paper trail connecting me. Is that legal? I asked, my voice strangely calm. It's messy, she said, choosing her words carefully. Technically, if the estate didn't have a binding disbursement plan or third-party trustee enforcement, it falls on trust. If you weren't involved in the transfer, and it was handled through your father, you'll need legal intervention to challenge it. I let that sink in. All that time. The guilt. The doubt. The nights I thought maybe I had just misunderstood Grandpa. Or that I didn't deserve the help. It was never my failure. It was theirs. Cecily stood. Would you like me to print everything for your records? Yes, please. And she did a full packet. Timestamped, signed, official. It felt heavier than it was. Later that day, I sat in a small legal office that smelled like peppermint and toner. My aunt had called in a favor with an attorney named Maura King. She wore red lipstick and no smile. I trusted her immediately. She flipped through the documents, her eyebrows twitching at certain points. You have a case, she said. This isn't just mishandling. It's personal financial misconduct involving inheritance funds. Will I win? I asked. She shrugged. If your goal is to get the money back, very likely. If your goal is to rebuild trust with your father, less so. That made me laugh. That's not on my list. Good, she said. Because this is going to rattle some cages. Let them rattle. That night, I walked back into the Everbright Motel for the last time. The hallway still smelled like burnt popcorn and bleach. I paused outside room 214, took one last look at the dented door, then opened it. Everything inside looked smaller now. The stained carpet, the flickering lamp, the sadness clinging to the wallpaper. I sat on the bed, that thin, creaky mattress I'd cried into more times than I could count, and whispered out loud, "You're not coming back here." Then I picked up my duffel bag and left. The next morning, I stood on the porch of a Craftsman-style rental on Garrison Street. Sunlight poured across the lawn. Inside it smelled like lemon oil and possibility. It wasn't mine, not yet. But Aunt Rhea had co-signed the lease. The place had hardwood floors, real windows, a bathtub that didn't creak. As I set down my box of sketchbooks and notebooks, I felt something shift. I wasn't surviving anymore. I was starting. And just as I reached to unpack my old laptop, the one I hadn't touched in a year, my phone lit up. Micah. I stared at the screen, let it ring twice, then pressed decline. Sunday came fast. Same day, same brunch, same restaurant on Bay Hill Avenue. But everything was different. This time, I didn't walk in alone. Aunt Rhea was beside me. Maura, my lawyer, sat 2 tables away, pretending to sip orange juice. She wasn't here for food. She was here for backup. I wore the navy blazer I found at a thrift shop 3 years ago. the one Mom once called too boxy. It fit perfectly now. And I wasn't seated at the end of the table anymore, next to the high chair and the chip chair leg. I sat at the center, where they could all see me. Micah was already there, fidgeting with the linen napkin. Dad arrived last, walking in like nothing had happened, like the last week didn't shake the foundation of everything we were built on. But the tension in his jaw told a different story. Aunt Rhea cleared her throat. "We're not doing pleasantries today." Micah opened his mouth, but she cut him off. "Sit down, both of you." Even Dad obeyed. I placed a folder on the table. Not as thick as Grandpa's, but just as heavy. "This," I said, "is the truth." I opened it slowly, one page at a time. The transfer log from the estate, the investment record, the clause from Grandpa's will, a notarized statement from the bank officer confirming account control, and finally, a letter of intent to pursue legal action. Micah swallowed hard. "Estella, come on. Do we really have to drag this into court?" "I begged for help," I said, voice calm but sharp. "You let me drown so you could build your portfolio." Mom looked like she was made of glass, fragile and ready to shatter. "I worked night shifts," I continued. "Ate out of vending machines. Showered at the gym when the motel water was off. And you," I turned to Dad, "sat in your house, drinking coffee made with money that was meant to change my life." He stayed silent. Then Aunt Rhea stepped in. "You're going to return every cent, Daniel. You're going to issue a statement to the family, in writing and aloud. If you don't, Estella will take this public. Court filings, depositions, the whole damn thing. And let me be clear," I added. "You won't use guilt. You won't weaponize shame. You don't have access to those tools anymore." Finally, Dad spoke. "So what? You're cutting me off?" "No," I said. "You already did that. You just thought I'd never notice." Micah muttered, "This is ridiculous." "No, you're ridiculous," I snapped, standing now. "You lied to protect him. You told people I had a house I never even walked through. And the worst part? You made me believe I deserved nothing." Micah looked away. "I'm done carrying your silence," I said. "From now on I speak." I turned to the others at the table. The cousins, the aunts, the people who'd watched me shrink into corners over the years. "I'm not here to make you choose sides. I just want you to know what really happened." Then I reached for the folder, slid it back into my bag, and stood to leave. Just before I turned, Dad's voice finally cracked. "You're really going through with this?" I looked him in the eye. "No, Dad. I already did." The house was small, but it had everything I needed. Sunlight pooled across the hardwood floors like it had been waiting for me. The kitchen had real tile, not peel and stick. The windows opened without a fight. The walls were bare, but they were mine to fill. The silence inside wasn't heavy like it used to be. It was clean, earned. Aunt Rhea had dropped off groceries on my first night. A fresh baguette, blueberries. She even included a tiny lavender plant in a mason jar. No one had ever done that for me. I lit a candle, sat on the floor, and breathed like I hadn't in years. The next morning, I did something I hadn't dared to do since college. I opened the folder labeled Estella Designs. It was buried in the dusty back corner of my laptop, behind tax returns and half-written resumes. Inside were dozens of things: floor plans, color palettes, mood boards, sketches I'd made between shifts when I thought design could still be part of my life. Before Dad called it a nice hobby. Before Micah said, "But that doesn't pay rent." I uploaded it all to a basic portfolio site. No expectations. Just showing up. 2 weeks later, an email hit my inbox. A small, women-led design studio in Portland had seen my layouts. They were working on transitional housing projects and needed someone who understood small spaces. How to make tight corners feel like home. I stared at the message for a long time. "We love your eye for warmth and structure. Are you available for a virtual interview?" I laughed. Out loud. Like a full, unfiltered belly laugh. When the day of the interview came, I wore the same boxy navy blazer. I showed them the spaces I used to live in. Described the cracks in the ceilings. The smell of mildew. The necessity of hope in a tight square footage. They offered me the contract the next morning. It wasn't just a job. It was proof. Proof that I wasn't lazy or helpless. That living in a motel didn't mean I belonged in one. That a girl with no couch and no savings could still design beauty for others. Months passed. The seasons turned. And then one Sunday, it was my turn to host brunch. The table was mismatched, but it was solid. The plates were real. So was the bread. No folding chairs. No excuses. Just light, laughter, and lavender on the windowsill. Aunt Rhea arrived first, carrying orange juice and a knowing smile. My cousin Jamie brought pastries from a downtown bakery, the good ones. Even Mom came. Quiet, uncertain, but there. She stood by the doorway longer than needed. Then finally said, "I like what you've done with the place." I nodded. "It's honest." She looked down. "I'm sorry I didn't ask more questions before." "I stopped expecting people to," I said gently. "But I'm glad you're here now." We didn't hug. Not yet. But we shared a look that meant something was beginning to thaw. Dad wasn't invited. He did pay the money back, on schedule, under legal pressure, but the apology stayed typed and signed in a folder somewhere. And that was fine. Some people's absence is the greatest piece of all. Later, as I refilled coffee mugs and passed the blueberry scones, Aunt Rhea reached over and squeezed my hand. "You built all this from a motel room," she whispered. "No," I said, smiling. "I built it from the truth.